Welcome to Thoughtful Planning, the place where real conversation, expert insight, and a touch of humor meet to turn our end-of-life uncertainties into self-assurance. I'm your co-host, Santiago, a history buff and a big kid at heart.
And I'm Honey, your guide through the intricate dance of planning with care and a whole lot of warmth. Every week, we're here to turn those intimidating "are we ready" moments into confident "everything is under control" moments. Today's journey is one you won't want to miss. Hi, welcome to Thoughtful Planning. I'm Honey.
And I'm Santiago.
Well, today, our guest has had not one, not two, but three personal experiences with estate planning, and she's here to share her insights. I met her virtually through a mastermind group about 18 months ago, and she's the owner of Define Yourself Longevity. She's also a speaker and an author of 2 books. Damn It, It Is Menopause Volume 1. And then the other book is More, Damn It, It Is Menopause Volume 2.
Wow. Most people don't have any experience when it comes to estate planning. So we're really excited to dive in and learn from a pro. As you process that, I want to pose an essential question. So how can comprehensive planning for your end of life help with your executor?
Great question, babe. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sally Bartlett to the show. So Sally, thank you for being here with us today. Would you please share a bit about your background and your experience with estate planning?
Yes, I would love to. And it's really nice to be here with you too. I love your podcast and I've been learning all kinds of things. As Honey, you already said, I'm also a corporate health and menopause coach and educator. So I really love to educate women who are perimenopausal about how to deal with that. And part of that time of life actually intersects with what you two do, because the time of life, often when a woman starts thinking about estate planning, she is also in that late 30, early 40 to 50s perimenopausal age range. So just a little bit of background on me so that you can understand where I'm coming from. On a personal note, I've been maintaining about a 4 clothing size loss for over 30 years now. And so as a result of that, and I did that without dieting. And so I kind of found a healthy balance between moderate eating, moving in a way that makes my heart sing, but also reduces disease risk and promotes emotional literacy and optimal mental health. So I've been a health coach helping other women with this all these years. So I thought, menopause is not going to be an issue for me. And then lo and behold, it really was. I started having a lot of symptoms, hot flashes. That was one of the big ones, but also mood swings, insomnia. And if you're in a place where you're deciding to do estate planning, that can kind of complicate things because you're not yourself. So I educated myself, and people don't really talk about this topic too much. So kind of like your topic, people don't talk about that. And I educated myself and I decided I'm writing a book because we need to talk about this and we need to all stick together and support each other. So basically that's what I've been doing as part of my coaching, is helping women go through this period of life with confidence about their bodies and everything associated with it, such as decisions like estate planning. So one of the many growth opportunities that I've had, or that I've been presented with along my life and my journey, is estate planning on both sides, as was introduced in the beginning. So I'm really happy to be here and talk about 2 important topics together, mostly yours, and hopefully help people to make the journey, make them realize it's worth the money and it's worth walking through the uncomfortable feelings so that you have a better quality of life.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't even think about the whole being clear of mind and menopause and how sometimes you might not be clear of mind while you're thinking about other things.
Right. I didn't That's a great connection. So thank you, Sally, for sharing that. Now, I know I talked to you about this before the podcast, but I think you mentioned to me you went through 3 parts of estate planning. One was about your parents' estate, your former husband's estate, and then your current planning with your fiance. So that being said, for the first question we have is being the co-trustee and executor of your parents' estate. That must have been very challenging. And can you tell us about some of the difficulties you faced during that process?
Sure. I think I was probably maybe in my 30s when my parents decided to do estate planning for themselves. And I knew I was assigned as the co-trustee, which I didn't even understand what that meant. I was just kind of la, la, la. Okay, we don't want to talk about that. And I was going to be the executor as well. And so time went by, and sadly, my mother passed away in like 2013. And so then things had to shift a little, because then my co-trustee job kind of came into effect, because it was just my dad and me then. I think I could have this wrong, and I'm not a legal person, so I'm a lay person in this affair. But my understanding was that, I took over for my mother as the co-trustee when she died. And so then in the state that I lived in. And so that was all fine and good. And I still was kind of like, well, where is that file, Dad, that I need to know about when the time comes? And he's like, it's right here. And so I would ask him that like once a year, like, tell me where it is again. And that was it. And he didn't like to talk about it. And then everything was fine until my dad started dating someone. And that became an issue, because there were signs that there was elder abuse or emotional abuse going on by that person my dad was dating. And I'm not going to go into the details, but it was challenging. It was painful. I needed to talk to all my 2 siblings about the issues. We did find it necessary to look for attorneys further to assist us in what was happening there. And in the end, it was determined, like, if we wanted to preserve the good relationship we had with our father, that we would know his assets were protected legally because of the fact that he had done estate planning, and that we're not going to challenge. I know these are terms that your listeners are going to know and that you're probably more familiar with than I, but we wanted to get power of attorney over his financial, instead of we wanted to take it on from him, so that this other person couldn't interfere, in a nutshell. And we determined in the end it would be very costly to do that and would ruin the relationship we had with our father that we loved dearly. So we chose not to do that. And thankfully, everything turned out okay, because we had enough in place to make that happen. So I'm being kind of vague, but I hope that gets the point across of it was challenging, yet super nice that we had what we had in place financially with my father. And I was able to carry out his wishes and peacefully settle everything in the way he wanted it to be handled.
Yeah, that's why it's important to have that plan out front. So, and your experience with your former husband's estate is a little bit more unique, particularly since you were separated, headed towards divorce at the time. How did you navigate that situation? And what were some of the most challenging aspects of that?
Let's see. And this is probably common that your listeners will hear too. We set up something. We had something drawn up when our son was about 5. So that would have been in his mid-20s now. So a long time ago, we had paperwork drawn up. Then because of the status of our relationship, which was the communication was not great, one of the things that fell through the cracks was ever finalizing any of that paperwork. So there it sat dormant for like 15 years. Fast forward, we were on the road we were separated, we were getting a divorce, and we said, okay, we need to finish this now. I got a bigger voice, a stronger voice, and started saying, like, we need to do this. And I stuck with it. So we did for the interest of our son, whom we both dearly love. And the guy said, the attorney said, if you guys agree so well on this, why are you getting a divorce? And we all just laughed. It was a friendly divorce, thankfully. We said, well, we're not going to go into that. So we proceeded, we finalized the paperwork, we explained it to our son and set it up, customized for the age he was at that time. And then I know I'm kind of fast forwarding all the juicy parts, but the divorce, we remained on good terms. The paperwork, it all was in place. The trust was in place and in the state we were in. And then the divorce, let me get this right. The divorce became final. And 4 months later, he died. And I have to go back a sec. When we finally said hey, we're getting a divorce, we went back to the estate planning attorney and we said, hey, it's going to happen. We really are going to get divorced after 7 years being separated. What do we need to do? And he said, you need to split apart your assets now. And each of you needs to do your own trust and will separately. He said, I will not disclose to each of you what the other one does. So I know what I did with mine, and I never knew what he did with his. Then he died 4 months after we got divorced. And I found out from the attorney at that time that he had kept me as the executor of everything. So I had another job, which I just completed. Is ironic because the 1 year anniversary of his death is tomorrow. And so I just completed a few months ago everything that I needed to do as the executor for that. So I want to say it takes almost a year to complete all that. So yeah, the challenges with that were, you asked me what the challenges were. I think that kind of says it all right there. Just having uncomfortable conversations again, yet doing it because we loved our son. Even though we chose not to stay married, we could agree we loved our son. We wanted to make things easy on him. We only have the one child. So, and again, it was so worth it. It's very emotional when you're going through these things. You want to scream. You want to quit. You want to just take a nap, take off your shoes and just take a nap and you need to do that. You need to make sure that you emotionally regulate throughout this. And so that you don't turn to things that are not good for you, like excess alcohol or even, non-nutritional foods, because those all increase your disease risk. And if you are going through menopause, that doesn't help anything either. So those have been my experiences with that situation.
I think you hit a couple of key points there. One, you didn't do it for you. You didn't do it for him. You did it for your son, which we've talked about often. And that's key. And the fact that I think it's kind of shocking that you guys didn't have that conversation. I know that if something were to happen to Honey and I wanted to keep her because I trust her with all my heart, I'd say, hey, I know we're not moving on, but I still want you to be there to help.
Mm-hmm.
And then finalizing it, you weren't going, I just make this assumption. Menopause wasn't playing a part of that separation, but the separation was going on. So you might not have been as clear of mind as you guys thought you were at the time too. So that's something else that's interesting about that story.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you were divorced, but it sounds like you were
so close,
friends, and, you have a son together. And, what I felt through that story, I thought you were 9 months and he had a trust. It's quite a long time. So I'd be interested to know more about what takes the longest time to finalize, what in that time frame of getting things completed. What were some of the things that took a long time? Well,
the organizational skills of the person whose estate I was handling were different than mine and not the greatest. So there was a lot of detective work that I had to go through where is this bill? How is it paid? Those kinds of things. And one of my helpful tips is I kept a log. I love to create logs. I'm
Mhm.
kind of weird like that.
Me too.
And so I created a log, and I would say, like, on this date, I spoke with this person, and this person's name was this, and she or he said this, and to call back on this date. And then I would mark it in my calendar, and I call that person back, and I'd say, hey, on June 5th, you said da 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 da. How are we doing? And, always being patient and friendly with the people, but direct. And it took a long time because every single person you deal with, bank account, medical bill, utility bill, things you didn't even know they had, whatever. Every time you deal with each thing, it's a little bit different. One wants the death certificate and it has to be the original. One will take a copy and you could just scan it. Another one wants some paperwork from the attorney. Another one, you just tell them I'm the executor and they're like, okay. And that's all they need. So it's different every time. So that's why the note taking is very helpful as far as just keeping track. And like I said, if you're having brain fog, you need that documentation again. It really comes in clutch. So that was part of the reason it took so long. And then of course there's you need to do the person's taxes and I used a tax person to help me with that. So that, and that again will differ from state to state. So I won't even go there, but suffice it to say, I did hire someone to do that for me and help me with that and tell me what they needed. And they were in a different state. So I had to keep, every time a tax form came in from his work, whatever the blah-de-blah form for the IRS, I had to scan it, keep track of it, put it in a file, all the things. I think I could have a job doing this. Actually, I've got so much experience now.
Yes, sounds like. Wow. Now, currently, if I understood, you recently finalized estate plans with your current fiance, then I'm thinking that must have brought up a lot of emotions and challenges, especially you moved to a new state. I've heard you mention a lot, like the state you live in. And of course, we know that too, like with attorneys we've talked to, like every state has different rules. So can you talk about the importance of having boundaries and these uncomfortable conversations in estate planning with your fiance?
Yes, I'd love to. The thing I want to talk about is I call myself a recovering perfectionist, and I'm educated. I like to think that I'm average intelligence. And when I don't understand something completely to where I could like teach a workshop on it, I get frustrated. And in the area of legal advice, I feel like I know enough to get by and to get the job done and to educate myself and make good decisions. However, I definitely could not do a workshop on all of these issues. And so I have to let that go. I have to trust myself that I know enough. And part of that, the way I got to that point was that my fiance and I interviewed 4 separate attorneys, all from things we had heard. Well, not all, but 3 of them were from word of mouth recommendations in this new state we had just moved to. So we did the best we could educating ourselves. We took notes. One of the attorneys that we were considering gave us this really cool template, which you all may have something like that in your legacy toolkit, which is amazing, that helped us collect our thoughts and understand what the attorneys were going to want to know and familiarize us with the terms they were going to be using over and over and over. So I didn't just go like freeze and freak out when they said some term that I'm like, wait, power of attorney for financial, power of attorney for health. Like, what are you talking about? And what is it called in this state and blah, blah. So that was one of the things we encountered. And then we did make a decision together. And then like you mentioned, honey, they were uncomfortable conversations because I have a son and he is my biological son. He's not the biological son of my fiance, although he loves him and knows him well. So we had to talk about, based on my history with my father and what happened legally with another person trying to reach what we had in place unsuccessfully, I am leery of that. I want to know that my son is going to get half the house if I die first. And so I got really comfortable having those conversations, and it wasn't fun in the beginning. Like, well, if I die first, I want this. And speaking up and saying what I really wanted. And I want to be cremated, and that's for sure. And I want to donate my organs. And so we had to have a lot of conversations. The conversations got easier and easier. In the process of interviewing all those attorneys, we learned a little bit. The words kind of would roll off our tongue a little bit more easily, not perfectly. And we were able to have those conversations. And I had them with my son as well. And so the upshot of all that is we, like, literally, I think it's been about 3 weeks now since we did all the signing of the paperwork in a new state where there's some pretty significant changes that are different from our old state, which threw us, but we got through it. And then the thing that I wasn't expecting was that we signed all the paperwork, and then I was just like a mess that day. I wasn't myself, and I'm like, I just have to lie down. I feel like I got hit by a truck. What is wrong with me? And what I came to, because I like to have emotional regulation, I like to know when I'm having really strong feelings, I like to know, what is this about, so that I can take better care of myself. And what came up was that this activated a lot of feelings from dealing with the situation with my father when I was the estate planner, and dealing with the situation with my former husband when I was his executor. I think I said the wrong word just then, but there you go. So it brought up a lot of feelings. And so I say that just to make people aware that don't freak out. That could happen, and you're not going to fall apart. You're going to get through it. You're going to feel those feelings. And I talked to friends about it who knew what, had maybe been through what I've been through before, or a trusted friend where I could say, I think I'm cracking up here and losing my mind. And then I realized, like, no, this is normal. Of course you would have those feelings. Of course you may be processing feelings about your dad's death and your mom's death and your ex-husband's death, the father of your child, for maybe forever. I don't know, but I just kind of want to embrace that and be open to that and welcome that. And I, want to share that message with others that yes, it can be uncomfortable, but it would have been so much worse if I hadn't had all those things in place. So I'm glad I've done it twice now, and that I've made new plans now with this future relationship. And for those of your listeners who aren't married yet, it's a great time to do that stuff, because you really learn more about the person that, it brings up a lot of conversations, especially if it's going to be a blended family, that are really uncomfortable. And you feel, I had to risk, like, I'm going to sound really selfish here, but fill in the blank. This is what I want. And we got through it, and we're stronger because of it. And I'm super excited to marry this man. So there's that.
Wow.
I don't think that's selfish.
No.
Saying this is what I want. One of the things we're doing is developing a playlist. And my playlist is going to be way different than her playlist. The pictures are going to be different. Our celebration of life is going to be different. But it's how I think I want to be remembered, and how I think she wants to be remembered. And we're both know that we're going to honor that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's great that you guys are having this conversation and sharing them with your son. I think that's exactly what you're supposed to do, in my opinion.
Right. And then I want to say thank you for sharing your feelings, the feelings that you went through, to let the listeners know, like you said, that it's okay. It's part of the process. And that exactly what you said, it's okay. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that.
The whole different feelings from when a parent passes to a man that you were with when no longer are, when he passed, those are different emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, all right. Wow, that was deep. So going back to the folks that you actually were an executor for, did your family members have everything documented so you knew exactly what they wanted at the end? Or did they leave some stuff up to you trying to figure it out and guess?
Well, when you're talking about my father, I am my daughter's father, whatever. I'm exactly the way he is. So it was perfect. Everything was right in order. And I was like, yes, Dad, yes. So there was pretty much, there still was a lot of legwork. I think that's unavoidable. That took a lot of time. Dividing up an IRA took forever, and balls were dropped. And you're usually dealing with like 3 different people. Like it's you, your siblings, or whoever's getting it divided among them, and the IRA person, and then the other person that's on the receiving end of all the recipients of the IRA proceeds. So there was a lot of breakdown there and called for a lot of patience. And that was one of the other things that took a long, long time. So I'm not sure if that actually answers your question, Santiago.
No, I mean, 'cause you can't plan for everything, but having a 90% solution is often better than not having a solution at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He was very clear about what he wanted, and he had actually constantly talked about it when he was getting older. He died at 93.
Wow.
But he was very sharp, and we made it something that was okay to talk about. And, it just took courage. And he didn't want to talk about it. Then I didn't want to talk about it. And then we'd go back and forth over the years for like 30 years. And then finally, in the end, we were both on the same page.
Wow.
Even with someone as OCD as my dad was, it's never perfect. It's just never perfect. And there are always going to be obstacles, and you just have to keep persevering and know that it would be way worse if there hadn't been a plan in place.
Yes.
Right. So I'm just curious on this one, in terms of like when you're the executor and you got to get through all these, like planning the funeral, and these things cost money. So I was just curious, like, was there money readily available for you to take care of these funeral arrangements and ongoing bills? Or did the money come from the estate, or how does that work?
I was lucky in that. So I had to handle whatever money there was, and I was able to use that money, parts of it. And then I had to negotiate with my siblings and say like, well, I'm doing this. And by the way, I did say I would like to be paid for this. So we did all the work. And then at the very end of when the memorial had been had and everything had been handled, then whatever was left, I split. And, this may sound like it was this huge amount of money. It was not. Like, I hear you talk about that on your podcast too. We're like, we don't have enough money to even be doing estate planning, but everybody needs to do it. And I learned why, for the protection aspect mainly, but we were able to so that decreased the amount that the 3 siblings got in the end, because I paid myself. I kept track of my time for all the work I did, the admin work I did. And then one of my brothers offered to pay for the memorial, and another one did something else. So it was lovely. I think the fact that we had the plan in place allowed the siblings to all work together. And it was a beautiful thing that I wasn't sure was actually going to be beautiful, but it was. It went fine. It was lovely. And of course, we had COVID in there in the middle of it, because he died in really the height of COVID. And so we chose to wait because we didn't want to do a Zoom service for him. We wanted to do it in person. So it was like 2.5 years later when we actually had the memorial for my father.
Wow.
And I was really glad we did that. And that also I wanted to encourage people to just do whatever, if you don't know what the person wants, do what feels right for you and the people that are named. Because, you just have to kind of in the end go like, okay, we're not sure about this part. We're just going to pray. We knew he wanted to be cremated. We knew all that stuff, but we didn't know if he'd want to wait till after COVID. So that wasn't in there. So we made that decision collectively, and we feel good about it. So you just kind of have to go with it. And so we were fortunate that it would have had to come out of our pockets had we not had a small amount to help with those things, because everything costs money. The cremation costs money. things that I wasn't expecting cost money. I was like, it costs a lot of money to cremate, and things like that. We didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Sorry, I'm taking notes here because I like the fact that you said, it took courage to do what you did. And it does, having those conversations, it's not easy. And people need to understand that you might piss somebody off, but in the end, you have to do what's right and to honor who we're trying to honor.
And it sounds like in your case, there was no one mad. Yeah. Everyone was on the same page. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think you hear that.
That's not always the case.
Right. You don't hear that often. So I think that's pretty cool.
Well, there was a little drama, but I'm just kind of leaving that part out. But
there always seems to be, right?
There was. And whether that girlfriend was going to attend the service, like whether she would show up there, I had some anxiety about that. And in the end, again, I had to just let that go and say, I can't control everything. And if she shows up, like, God love her, and so, yeah, there's definitely drama. I don't want it to look like, oh, we're the model family.
Well, but what is a model family nowadays? I mean, really?
Yeah. Don't know.
And that's okay. I've had the unfortunate experience of helping somebody that's died in the military, helping the family go through everything. Not exactly an executor, but you help them navigate the issues with that. So what are some helpful tips that you have, since you've done this a couple times, that besides the log, which I love, any other helpful tips that you might have or advice?
Yes. Well, I kind of covered the feelings thing, and that, just let your feelings go all over the place, but learn ways to emotionally regulate and I mean by that, like learning to identify, label, and express feelings in healthy, normal, and appropriate ways, like who it's safe to express them to and who it's not appropriate or safe to express them to, and do that. Get relaxation in there, self-care. Exercise is always good. Just, I like to say, moving your body in a way that makes your heart sing and reduces disease risk. I think I probably mentioned that is super important for stress relief and having that support network. There may be one member in the family, but maybe it's better to not have it be somebody in the family, but somebody like a close friend you trust, maybe who's gone through it before. And then I think just keep, encouraging yourself and saying, like, this is worth it. It's temporary. The discomfort I'm feeling, in the end, it is going to all work out. And it's way better than it would have been had none of this, keep your perspective. Like, it could have been much, much worse. And just to remember to stay in it for the long haul and for the long-term peace of mind. I also, like I've mentioned, I think the financial component for me personally, setting up now my second trust, and the cost is, I don't know whether it's the time difference or the state difference, but it is much more expensive this time than last time. So I'm kind of, having buyer's remorse, but I keep telling myself, it's for the long run. It's for your son. You love your son. You don't want him to you want it to be as smooth as possible, given what he'll be going through if I die, when I die, and not knowing when that's going to be. So it's the adult responsible thing to do for those we love.
That's perfect. The adult responsible thing to do for those we love. I like that.
Yeah.
Adulting.
So as far as the financial deal, did you have to, you talked about setting up the trust. How much did you have to work with probate with the trust?
None. Not at all.
Okay. And that saves time and money when you don't have to do that.
Yes. I'm going to put you on my list of people to call, Santiago, because you could have helped me. You could have reminded me of that. Could have been way more expensive with probate.
And that's the thing. Time is money. And, if you have that trust set up, then we don't have to worry about paying another lawyer fee to go through probate. And I know with ours, we're still going to have to do a little bit through probate, but it's not going to be a lot.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's all I ever heard was you want to avoid probate. So we did 100% both times.
Nice.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you would like to add that we haven't already talked about?
I think, as far as just keep on keeping on. And for anyone who is going through it, my attorney was so helpful not my father's estate, my former husband's estate. He was very helpful. And when it all came down and I was given the news, he kind of had a talking to with me because I tend to be like overly nice. And he said, look, you're the executor. Take charge. You tell everyone when you call, you don't mess around. You just say, I'm the executor, and you go from there. And that was very helpful. And he said, when people ask you, oh yeah, this was a good one. He goes, because the post office wanted certain things too, like for forwarding addresses and stuff. He goes, the thing that, not the post office, but somebody, he goes, the thing they're asking you for is not even really in play anymore now that this person has died, but give them what they asked for. Just give them what they asked for. So he said, don't argue with the people. Just give them what you've got, all the paperwork. You've got your estate plan right there with whatever they want. Just give it to them. And that worked really well. And I grew a pair and I got tougher and sorry, Santiago. And
no, that's cool.
Some of you don't need to hear get tougher, but some of you do. And like, if you're like me, I needed to get a little tougher, and I still feel all my feelings and enjoy those and enjoy being a sensitive person and a loving person. And I can also be tough and get the job done, be direct.
And I think that's a good point, because you're not fighting for yourself. You're fighting for the final wishes of your loved one. And you want to make sure they're honored in the way they want to be honored.
Exactly. I'm talking mostly about the financial part. That was the biggest struggle.
I mean, if they want something to go to somebody and somebody's in the way that you didn't dot this T or cross this I, like, come on now, really? Mm-hmm. I'm super executor.
Yes.
So I just want to thank you for sharing your personal stories with us. We've learned a lot. I've got a couple pages of notes. Mm-hmm. Honey was hitting me a minute ago when I was writing my notes saying, go, go, go. But no. Like you, I was writing stuff down.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Always my pleasure.
Yes. So thank you again, Sally. By you sharing what it's like has really helped me understand what to be aware of, what to look out for, and for our listeners too, to think about these things. These are all very helpful things that you shared with us. So thank you. Would you please tell our audience how they can connect with you?
I would love to. I'd love to connect with you. You can reach me at www.sallybartlett.com. And ladies, if you're in your late 30s to early 40s and you haven't quite felt like yourself lately, you can take my free quiz. Could these feelings be menopause? Or maybe you know someone who's in denial about this time of their life, and you could help them to sort things out by going there. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'd love to hear from anybody.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to include those in the show notes for everybody.
Oh, yes. It's very enlightening for me too, especially about part 1 and part 2 of your books. So as we think about Sally's story, let's go back to our essential question. How can comprehensive deep planning for your end of life help your executor with your final wishes?
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, until next time, remember, every chapter you write today shapes your legacy tomorrow. Thank you for joining us at Thoughtful Planning. And just like the vibrant hues of a setting sun, we're wrapping up another episode of Thoughtful Planning. Every shared story and insight is a step closer to turning uncertainty into celebrations of preparedness.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, remember that every surprise that comes our way is an opportunity to grow, adapt, and learn. Stay tuned for more stories, expert insight, and of course, a touch of wit in our next episode.
We're not just co-hosts, we're fellow travelers on this journey. For more information on additional resources, which will help you take the next step in planning, look for the link in the show notes for our membership. Join us next time for another episode of Thoughtful Planning. Until then, keep living, laughing, and loving every moment.